Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Naked Truth. I am so happy to be doing a Naked Truth this week. I apologize that I had to last minute reschedule. This Naked Truth was supposed to take place last week, but I had a really sick husband and a really sick baby, and I was sick myself but refusing to acknowledge it, and everything kind of like came to an exploding point right before I was supposed to go live, and I just thought, I am so excited to talk about this topic on the Naked Truth, and there's no way that I can do it right now. So thank you to everyone who is here today and who was very understanding in that circumstance. You guys rock my socks. So thank you. Hi, Derek Lamba. Hi, Kevin Petty. Hi, James Wisdom. Hi, Christian Polson. Hi, Danny Hooley. Good to see you guys. So many people in chat today. Hi, Curtis Jeremiah. I see you. And I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Dieter says, cheers to anyone else day drinking. I wish I was you right now. I'm going to live vicariously through you. No, I took Logan to his swim class this morning, which he loves, and then I put him down for nap, and I just barely had time to jump in the shower real quick. So I actually did shower before today's Naked Truth and come to do this Naked Truth with you guys, which this is one that I cannot believe I haven't done yet, but this was suggested by Steven Summers in chat on last Naked Truth, I believe, who said, you should do a Naked Truth on D&D. And I was like, why the hell haven't I done that? And it's funny because now I actually get to play D&D a lot and call it work, which is crazy. I did a series called Foreververse on Geek and Sundry, and I developed a Dungeons & Dragons show for The Escapist before they closed down, and I tried developing a Dungeons & Dragons show for SourceFed Nerd way back in the day, but Phil was like, nobody's going to watch that, and Phil has a very good finger on the pulse of his audience, and I think he knew that most of the SourceFed audience would not be into the intense rules that Dungeons and Dragons usually requires, which is why what SourceFed Nerd ended up doing with Functions and Flagons was a much more like mainstreamed, kind of very oversimplified version of what tabletop role-playing can be. And I think that did end up working better for that audience, more so than I was like trying to launch like a Critical Role before Critical Role existed. And everyone was like, who's going to watch that? But people do. And the one on Hyper RPG, GK Gamer Fan. Yeah, I got to do a great one on Hyper RPG based on the Banner Saga video games, which I love. So that was cool. Jose Gomez says, I love your hair. Thank you for my wet hair. It's a wet hair day. But yeah, so my history with Dungeons and Dragons, and kind of, I guess let me start off with, if there's anyone watching this that doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game that is so special to me. And it combines my love of performance and interacting with friends, with my love of fantasy, and also with my love of rules. There are a lot of rules and calculations in Dungeons and Dragons, and I was always a big math nerd. So I started playing D&D all the way back in high school, and I joke around with my friends that I feel like such an odd bird because I'm someone who majored in theater in college and minored in theology, and that's such a weird combo. And a good friend of mine said, oh, so you're a D&D kid? And I was like, oh my God, yes! Because there's lots of different religions and pantheons and deities within D&D, and for me, studying theology was all about studying different people's world beliefs. So the marriage of theater and theology is perfect for someone who loves D&D. So kind of a light bulb moment. And I have good friends who are not Dungeons and Dragons players who kind of said like, hey Trisha, what is this game? What is this all about? Maybe it's something I would be interested in. And I explained it to a friend like, well, you get to act out a story. But the rules and kind of regulations that make the world real are all withheld in a book. So she was like, oh, so it's like improv, but from a book. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's go with that. And she's like, great, can I do one but like a romance novel? And I was like, I mean, yes. If your GM or DM or your storyteller are on board for that. But basically, it's a tabletop game where your imagination's your limit. So you have one person who runs the game, your DM or your GM or your storyteller, depending what tabletop role-playing game that you're playing. But in Dungeons & Dragons, it's a DM, Dungeon Master. And they act as the narrator, they create the world, they act as all the NPCs, and they guide you on this story. And then you, as the player, get to figure out, within this character I've built, how would this character who I'm portraying react in these situations? How do I solve this conflict? Am I someone that would solve this conflict with battle? Am I someone who would solve this conflict by trying to, schmooze my way out of it? Or can I think of a solution to this that doesn't involve combat? There's all different types of things. And like I said, it gets very complicated and there's a lot of rules. But to me, that's what makes the world real. And that's what makes the game fun. That's why it's a game. I like having those ramifications. And it's just a great mix of the creative and the analytical. There's a little something in it for everyone. And it's nice because, I love playing fantasy video games. Like, I am an old school Baldur's Gate, like King's Quest, if we want to go really old school. But I love fantasy video games, but this combines the social element. So you get to have this fun with your friends all in the same room. And it's not really a casual game. So for your friends who kind of like Cards Against Humanity is the max complicated game they're willing to play. They don't really want to get into an Axis and Allies 6-hour match. D&D is probably not the game for them. That being said, there might be other tabletop role-playing games that are more simplified that they would be into, like a Fungeons and Flagons on Geek Bomb, Maud Garrett's Fungeons and Flagons. So, let's do a little show and tell. I want to do a little show and tell. So some of the things that you use when you play Dungeons & Dragons, this is my Player's Handbook. This is the newest 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. And I've got some character sheets that I'm working on in it. But this basically has, if you're going to play for the first time, I always say to my friends, either get a digital version of this or I will lend you my version of this. But this explains the different races you can be, the different classes you can be, how combat works. This is pretty much like everything you need to know to be a player. And it can be a little intimidating because it's 318 pages. I think right here is what I just looked at, 318 pages. And the character sheets can look a little bit overwhelming if you have never seen one before. There's a lot of different numbers and stats on here. But for beginning players, I always say, look, work with a DM who really understands the world and can explain it to you in a simplified way, and then read the sections in the player's handbook about the character who you want to be. So if you're not a magic user, skip the magic section for now. You can even probably skip the combat section because a good DM will guide you through that as you play, and you'll learn that as you go. But read the section on your race, read the section on your class, read the section when it comes to your alignment so that you know how to role play your character. Let's see. Other show and tell stuff. I know that I mentioned there are other tabletop role-playing games. If D&D is a setting you've played a lot and want to try something more of, you can try something like Puppet Land, which has simpler rules. And this is some system that I got to play on Foreververse with Geek and Sundry. There are also systems like Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf, which I played tons of back in my high school days. This is a newer system I've recently gotten into. This is Adventure or Conquer King, and this was actually a game designed by a friend of mine who I met back when I was working at the Escapist, Alexander McCree, and this is a really fun full world system as well that I've gotten the chance to play in. So, the amount of systems you can play are endless, so if it's not necessarily for you, you can probably find one that's more in line with you. And I see, Kevin Petty, thank you so much for the super chat, says, hi, would you do Critical Role on Geek and Sundry, and do you want to DM? I would 100% do Critical Role on Geek and Sundry if I was ever fortunate enough to be asked. I have gotten to play at their table during Celebrity D&D on Geek and Sundry, but I've not actually gotten to play with them. It would be an absolute honor if they would have me, but they have a long list of people who want to guest on Critical Role, so I will patiently wait my turn. But yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. And do I want to DM? Fun question. I did try to DM once back in high school when I was playing much more regularly, and I was like, if I'm going to DM, I want to create my entire system. I'm an overachiever. So I was like, I want to create a whole world that's just my world and a whole system that's just my system. And I realized after putting hours and hours into it and drawing maps, and I had all these charts and different things, that I kind of ripped off Hogwarts. So I had this land where everybody started as a level 1 character because I like to run lower end campaigns. Some DMs like to start you at a higher level so you're more powerful when you begin, because that's when a lot of the really fun stuff starts. I actually think it's really fun to play low level campaigns, probably because that's what I learned on. But I had this system where there were different training islands, and I thought I was so clever that I was going to have a different character start on different training islands based on their alignment, but not tell them it was based on their alignment, kind of let them figure it out. And then I just kind of totally realized I was creating Hogwarts. So I ended up never DMing using that world that I created, and I have been very intimidated to DM, so I've actually never DM'd my own game. Isn't that crazy? I've played tons of D&D and never sat in the hot seat. But it's because I've been very fortunate to play under some really wonderful DMs, and they are at such a high bar, at such a high level, that I'm like, oh man, I don't know that I could ever do that. I think if I cut myself a little bit of a break and just let myself have fun with it, I probably would have no problem DMing. But again, because I've been so blessed and fortunate to play with some amazing DMs, the bar is very high. Other things I wanted to do show and tell. Sometimes Dungeons and Dragons can involve miniatures. Now, miniatures are these little guys who you use on maps to show where your characters are. And there's all different ones. So let me bring up, I got a little halfling over here. And this one in particular is from my Foreververse campaign. This was my character Jade when we were in the Seven Seas system. And these were printed by a company called Hero Forge. That's such a cool thing. They didn't have this when I was in high school. You can design your character, the look of your character, based on your character sheet, and they 3D print them and send them to you, and then it's up to you to paint them or to use them unpainted. But there are tons of different, like, let me get this figure is a barbarian, and we used him when my husband had a character named Moror in the last campaign we were playing with for fun, and so that was Moror's figure. You also get big baddie figures because you got to put those on the map somewhere so you know when you're what the area of effect of a spell you're casting or something like that is, whether it would actually affect certain people and what the distance is between people. So if you have a ranged weapon, would that ranged weapon reach that target, etc. So like I said, there's a lot of rules around that, but I really like playing with maps and minis. Not everybody does, but I like to do that. And then a lot of the stuff that's left up to chance, of course, is determined by luck and the roll of the die. It's not all luck. If you have better armor, you have easier rolls to hit and that kind of stuff. But I have lots of different dice that have been my dice over the years. This bag is my generic bag, and then I have special this is so nerdy. I have special bags per character. So like I didn't bring it upstairs, but we have I have a barbarian themed bag. I have a bag that actually a viewer created and sent in to me when I was on Geek and Sundry's Foreververse that was specific to that character Jade. That was super cool. And I generally tend to pick, I don't like to do matching dice sets because sometimes I'm feeling different dice at different times. But I generally like to pick dice that are slightly more feminine. And I think that comes from when I started playing and I was in high school. I was the only girl in my group. So there weren't as many women that I knew that played. And a lot of the guys that I played with either had matching dice or kind of like more aggressive, like red and black kind of standard looks to their dice, and I wanted to differentiate mine, and I have always been someone who is very proud of the fact that I tend to off-put a little more traditionally feminine things, and so I thought, you know what, let me embrace that. I want to reflect my personality. Like I have a lot of pink and purple and blues and sparkly and that kind of stuff in my dice set, or I really like this one, green and purple. But so a lot of times when I go to conventions, I'll stop at Chessex or any kind of dice booth and just kind of like see if there's anything that I'm really feeling that I want to add to my collection. Let me see if I can find, I just had it. I'm going to show you guys this gold D20. So this is a 20-sided dice, but it's really heavily weighted. And so depending on the material of the dice as well, then you get a feel for it. I don't know. Sometimes you're like, oh, to cast this spell, I need this specific dice. So I get a little overly superstitious about that stuff. I'm happy to share my dice with other players and have many, many times, but like these are my babies. I feel kind of naked when I'm playing with someone else's dice. Just to say it. So let's see. Okay, I kind of started this earlier and then went off on a tangent, but I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like, how did I get started? I started playing Dungeons and Dragons back in high school, probably, I want to say my sophomore year of high school, so 10th grade. I was dating a boy, my high school boyfriend, and he played a lot of D&D with his friends, and he kind of kept it secretive for me at first and was like, oh, I'm doing this thing with my friends, because I guess, at that time it was not cool. It's cool now, thank you, Critical Role, but it was not cool then. And I got curious and I was like, hey, what are you playing? Like, could I check it out? And they were super welcoming and inclusive and were like, yeah, absolutely. Why don't you sit in on a session and like see if it's something you want to do? And I watched them play and then I was like, yes, 100% I want to do this. This looks so fun. So I borrowed a player's handbook, that player's handbook that I showed earlier, and I read it cover to cover and I was like, yes, I'm in. Let's do this. And so I learned on second edition AD&D, Planescape specifically, and second edition is kind of touted for being more analytical and more very heavily calculations based than certainly 5th edition is now. That's a little bit more mainstreamed, but I like that they kept in some of the old school detail as an option in case you want to use it. So for people like me that are like, yes, the more specific, the more realistic the world is for me, and that puts me in it more. I'm way into that. And then I played Vampire the Masquerade, and I played Werewolf, and all of this was in high school. And I ended up wanting to play so often that I was jealous. I went to an all-girls school, which is an entirely different Naked Truth for another time. I went to an all-girls high school, and my boyfriend at the time went to like our kind of brother school, like the all-boys school that was close by. And the all-boys school had a gaming club where they got together and played Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. And I was super peeved that my all-girls school did not have that. So I actually used to go over to the boys' school and join their gaming club after school if I wanted to play games. But yeah, I mean, I was totally hooked, and I played lots of games, and I collected my own dice and collected minis and collected my own books. And now there's like a whole section of the bookshelf in my living room that Nate and I, because Nate played when he was younger as well, have all of our Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And I'm ashamed to say that since I've made a tiny human, I have not had time to play, because when you sit down to adventure, it's typically 4 to 8 hours of a session. It's very hard to make it smaller than that. Geek and Sundry does a very good job of smaller sessions, but my experience has always been like around 6 hours when I get together and play with friends. So yeah, so that's how I got into it. And then in college, I found a gaming group when I got to college, but I got so involved with theater since that was my major, and it was like I was either on a crew or in a show and just kind of at the theater all the time that I didn't have a lot of chance to play D&D in college. I played a little bit with that group, but not very much. And then when I moved out to LA, I was on set for, I think I was an extra in a Weezer music video. And I just happened to meet some other people that were there as extras that, I forget how we got on it, but we ended up talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and we were all like, wait, you play too? And we got together a little group here in LA of the people that I met on set that day and some of their friends, and we played a few times, but they always got together on Saturdays, and at the time I was waiting tables, and Saturdays were my big money day, and they would go from like 12 to 6, so I couldn't work the morning shift or the night shift, and it just, financially, I couldn't pay my rent and keep playing D&D with that setup. And then when Nate and I started dating, we got together a few friend groups and played with those friend groups, and like I said, now I'm #blessed enough to be able to call it work sometimes. Thank you, Geek and Sundry and Escapist, for those opportunities where I get to play Dungeons and Dragons and call it work. And I'm so proud to be a part of Geek and Sundry and what they're doing for tabletop gaming and what they've been doing for tabletop gaming. It's so much more mainstream now. It's not something you have to hide that you're doing or that you love or that you're proud of. It really celebrates tabletop games and specifically tabletop role-playing games. So it's a wonderful community, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And Foreververse, the show I was on, was kind of like Quantum Leap for tabletop role-playing. So we'd spend a little while in one system in one world and then leap to another one, but we still retained like our same characters and our same memories, just leaping to a new world. And that was so fun. That was so much fun. So let me go ahead. I'm sorry I've been talking so much. This is just something I'm so passionate about and love so much that I haven't had a chance to check out a lot of your comments. So let's see. Adventure in Life says, have you yet heard about Tabletop Troubadour Games? I'm very excited about using their molded sets in a D&D game. No, I have not. Please tell me more. I see a lot of love in chat for Vampire the Masquerade right now, which is awesome. It's so good. Mark L says, will you teach your tiny human? I cannot wait to teach my tiny human. In fact, on the other YouTube channel that I work with, Nerds with Kids, we've talked about ways to get the kids into D&D and different systems, how we might be able to let them play while still keeping the world and the imagination and kind of the reality of that world. So a lot of the rules-based stuff intact, but streamlining it enough that the kids can get involved and play. And so we've toyed with a lot of different ways to do that. But when we do get something together, you will see it. Know that it's in the works. Tyler Boyce says, I've been blessed to have friends willing to share their RPG materials, so it's helped mitigate some of the cost. Yes, that's great. I always recommend borrowing and sharing with your friends. And some RPG systems, how am I forgetting the name of that site? drivethrurpg.com. Some of the systems will even offer their digital PDFs of their systems for free. Some of them are for a cost there. But that's a really nice way to do it too. If you can't afford the hardcover book, you can like pay, I don't know, $6 or $8 or whatever and download the digital PDF off that site. Thomas Toft says, I learned to play D&D in an after-school childcare thing. What? We had a student doing his internship and he taught a few of us boys 10 to 12-year-olds to play, and I've been hooked ever since. Yeah, that's a great age to play. I completely forgot to mention Stranger Things is also doing things to make D&D more mainstream. I love that they incorporated that into the series because that is an age that a lot of people get into it and really, really learn how to play and really jump in full force. Oh man, Are we Dead Yet says, I played D&D back in the early 80s. That's awesome. Were you playing 2nd edition? Let me know. Or I guess early 80s. That would have been like way basic, not even AD&D, just like regular D&D, right? Okay, let's see. That James Wisdom says, I have so many dice, but I have never played D&D. Well, you can use your dice for lots of different games, but if you get the chance to play D&D, I highly recommend it. Some of the questions I had for you guys is the part of the show where I like to turn it around to you. And I know some of you are answering this already, but have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? And if so, when did you start? And if not, do you think it's something you would want to try? Why or why not? What's holding you back? I know a lot of people get very intimidated, like my friend who was kind of asking about it, and she was like, oh, I don't know that I'd want to play a 6-hour game, or maybe I couldn't handle the rules or whatever. So let's just kind of share, and maybe if there are people who are being held back or holding themselves back because they're maybe a little bit intimidated, maybe we can help dispel some of the things that you're intimidated by. So let's see. Chris says, Trish, I just looked this up. There are D&D children's books called the ABCs of D&D and the 1, 2, 3s of D&D. Logan has both of them, and they're actually written by my good friend, Ivan Van Norman from Geek and Sundry, who is one of the other members of Nerds with Kids. So we actually got to see those books before Wizards of the Coast was affiliated, and they were called the ABCs of RPG and the 1, 2, 3s of RPGs. And then they changed the title when Wizards of the Coast acquired them. But they're amazing books. If anyone has youngins out there, I highly recommend them. The 1, 2, 3s of D&D actually have a bestiary in the back. It's the cutest thing in the entire world. Christiane says, I just started playing D&D this year. That's amazing. What system are you playing? Please let me know. Neri Flores says, I definitely want to try after seeing some people's campaigns on YouTube. Yes, if you want to try, but you don't necessarily know if you have a community around you that wants to play, I recommend checking out your local hobby shops. And if you can't think of a gaming specific store near you, go to your local comic book stores and ask them if they have game nights where people come together to play. that is a fantastic way to meet other players and other like-minded people. And some stores even have a schedule where they're like, oh, on Wednesday nights we play D&D, on Thursday nights we play Magic the Gathering, on Friday nights we play Vampire the Masquerade, and you can like sign up for a slot. So that's a really great way to get into it. Are We Dead Yet says, I started with basic but quickly switched to advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Very, very cool. Michael King says, as I said, I only played twice, and it is more that I'm not into Magic. I got my dice just to have them and to jokingly roll for life decisions, which is a perfectly fine thing to do. Nate and I joked about rolling to determine what Logan's name would be. We didn't do that, but we joked about it. If you're not someone who's into Magic, it would be interesting to have a campaign where everyone only chooses non-Magic classes. You could always certainly choose a non-Magic class, but if you don't want like any Magic in your campaign, that would be an interesting choice. Maybe like an entire dwarven troop or something like that could be very cool. Adam C., thank you for the $50 super chat. Wow, thank you so much. Says, I would love to play D&D, but the work schedules of me and my friends just don't line up well. I totally understand that. I and many other people watching this, I'm sure, are in very much the same boat. So it is a commitment to really make sure that people set aside the time to do it, because you don't just do it once and then you're done. It's something that ideally is an ongoing campaign. So to that, I'd say maybe if you can find one of those hobby shops that has like a one-off or something like that, or talk to your friends and do a one-off, that maybe you can do that for like a special occasion. We keep talking about doing that for Nate's birthday. Xenocor01 gave a super chat, thank you so much, and says, I have been searching for a group to play Mechton Zeta for years. Curse of finding a game with no players. Also, what's your Thaco? Way to throw out that Thaco reference. Thank you so very much. What's my real life Thaco? Oh, God. Thaco, for those of you who never played 2nd edition, is to hit armor class 0. And again, it's part of that, like I was saying, like super complicated calculations-based rule system that was, as far as I know, never in another. I skipped some D&D editions, but never in another edition after that. Thaco is a very 2nd edition thing. Levi Salinas says, hey Trisha, I haven't ever played D&D, but I have a friend who plays it like every Sunday, and he's always trying to get me to play, but we never get the chance to. Yeah, I would say if you have a Sunday free and don't want to jump right into it, maybe just go observe, kind of like I did. Just kind of watch and see what happens, and see if it's something that you would be into, because it's certainly not for everyone. I know a lot of people that are very introverted, and Dungeons and Dragons isn't really their thing, although I've seen also people who are introverted get really into it because they'll play characters that are introverted and just kind of give themselves like a low charisma ability score, and then they're not the natural leader of the group anyway, so it kind of fits more in line with who they are. And speaking of that, another question for you guys: if you could play any type of character, any class, any alignment, etc., do you normally prefer to play characters that are close to your actual nature, or the complete opposite of who you are, because then you get to be somebody different? And this is always a really, really fun, question to ask people, because I waver back and forth a lot. I play characters that are usually good. I don't always, sometimes I play evil characters, and that's fun too. But I tend to play chaotic good characters, which is funny because in life I am so very lawful. I am such a lawful good alignment in real life. But I like to play chaotic characters because it gives me freedom that I don't feel like I have in my normal life. But I'm almost always finding myself wanting to save the NPC, wanting to be the good guy in the story. So that's closer to my actual nature. I also tend to create characters that are either performers in some nature, like myself, but usually more acrobatics or dance or kind of circus performer, so very high dexterity. And I'm super clumsy and can't dance or really be athletic at all. So that's another I wish that I could someday be this thing. So what do you guys like to be? I enjoy chaotic neutral, says Stephen Wilson. Well, I feel bad for the rest of your party because chaotic neutral is hard to play with because you're just, it's all over the place. JLove33 says, I love watching the storytelling of D&D. I think for me, the math is a little bit too complicated. If you have a good game master or dungeon master that can help guide you through it, then try not to let that intimidate you. But yes, if you had to DM it yourself, it might be a little tricky. Kenny Ray Newton says, if you ask a DM, all players make chaotic characters. That's true, because as a DM, the best laid plans can just be destroyed in the first 10 minutes, and then you're winging it for the entire rest of the adventure. Sheldon Marquez says, I like to make very different characters, the complete opposite of who you are. Chris says, I always put a little bit of me in my characters, whether they're insecure or determined or insecure or friendly or insecure. I get that. I totally do. That James Wisdom says, I played a not D&D thing a few times as a kid, and I was an elf to start and ended up with 4 arms plus 1 metal arm and a tail and with a helmet attached to my head. Hey, like you do. Llama Dungeon says, so you're just a paladin stereotype in real life? Yes, kind of. That's very true. A halfling paladin. Jasmine Karen says, I love playing characters like myself, usually destructive, hard to get along with, end up evil characters. I loved my Dragonborn with very fiery powers. Ooh, Dragonborn is so fun. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing. Tyler Boy says, my last D&D character was a Bard Rogue multiclass. Oh man, I'd love to play that. I tend to do a lot of Bards or Rogues, but I don't know that I've done a multiclass Bard Rogue. That sounds really fun. Lately I've been playing a lot of Sorcerers when I get the chance to play, because I like the idea of wild magic. Tyler Boy says, there's so many different class combos I would love to try out. Daniel Gable says, one thing I liked about the game was that it was a safe place to explore interactions without having it carry over into your real life. Yes, fantasy, that's what it is. It's just so wildly fun. Such a really immersive form of escapism. And now that being said, LARPing is even more immersive, and that's not something I've ever had a chance to try. But now that I'm friends with a lot of the Geek and Sundry community, that's something they do fairly often. So it's something that I would love to explore at some point in the future. I know a lot of my friends have been doing this really cool thing, and I forget the name of it, where they go LARPing in an actual European castle, which just sounds like so cool. It sounds so cool. Let's see. Tyler says, I usually take an already existing character and build a new character with that as an inspiration. For example, I have a Druid Monk multiclass lined up that's based off of Avatar Korra. Yay! That's super cool. Ahmed says, I have a multiracial half-orc, half-dwarf character. A dork. I see what you did there, and I like it. Or a dwark, which is also good. Joshua O'Kelly says, halfling paladin. My current home game has a gnome paladin. Hey, I'm with you. Let's see. Safwat Soccer says, invite them to testify that none has the right to be worshipped. Oh boy. Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that we got a lot. If there's any mods here, help me out. So let's see. Steven says, I like to make up my own race combinations. And, that James Wisdom says, I used to LARP, and I loved monstering. James E. says, hello from France. Hello back to you. Shadow says, I like my elf warlock since it kind of makes me partially feel like a Sith from Star Wars. Got it. And Ryu Dragon says, I love LARPing. I've been LARPing for 5 years. Oh my gosh. Spend the whole weekend outside beating people up with foam bats and seed packets. Dude, that sounds so fun. Like, so fun. Landar says, I made a dwarf ranger recently. Should be fun to try something besides playing a half-elf. Yeah, switch it up. Even if you have, like, your normal go-to. I definitely say switch it up. Drudley says, my current one is a very old alcoholic elf wizard. So close to home. I bet that's so fun to play. Like, so fun to play. And Greyhound says, wait, are we talking about LARP? Yeah, we did kind of tangent into talking about LARPing. D20 Dave says, I haven't done any LARPing, though I'd love to try it. I do love role-playing in D&D, though. Definitely my favorite part of the game. Yeah, I go back and forth. Sometimes I like to create characters that are very charismatic and kind of the natural leaders of the group and take charge. And then sometimes I like to be kind of the super quiet, more of background characters, like my character in the Banner Saga RPG that I did over at Hyper RPG. Kind of like the very mysterious, keeps to herself very often. Almost like kind of a Raceland caricature from the Dragonlance novels, if you ever read them. That's kind of the world I like to play in as well. So a little bit more mysterious. And again, that's because I feel like, I don't know, I'm more of an outgoing person in my real world. So it's kind of fun to play opposite that sometimes. So yeah, thank you guys so much for just sitting here and chatting with me about Dungeons and Dragons. This has been such a lovely time. And like I said, I can't believe I haven't done a Naked Truth on Dungeons and Dragons before and kind of told my story and how I'm into it. And I guess I don't talk about it as much as I should on social media, because pretty much anytime I post something about D&D, people are like, oh yeah, you've been playing D&D since like way back with Maud. And that's not true. I've been playing D&D for, God, so many years, since 10th grade. And I absolutely love it, and it's a huge part of my life, and it's one of the reasons that Nate and I started getting along so well when we started dating, because we realized that we both grew up playing D&D, and that was a really fun bond between the two of us. Nicholas Beeson with a super chat, thank you so much, says Halfling Druid Psionic. Ooh, from Dark Sun. Who else has played Dark Sun? I have not had the opportunity to play Dark Sun yet, but Psionics are always a really fun class in lots of different systems. I see Iverson, sorry, this was auto-held, but I'm going to show it. It says Gloomhaven is better than D&D. I've also not played Gloomhaven. Not enough time. James E says, first time talking about D&D while naked, just socks. Yeah, normally D&D is not a naked activity because you're at the same table with a lot of different people. So that is a little funny for sure. Levi Salinas says, I've always wanted to LARP. Back when I was in high school, I was known as Thor. I'd always talk in Old English and refer to myself in the third person, so I probably really enjoy LARPing. Yes, and I would love to see that character, so please definitely do that and post it online so that I can see it. GK Gamer fan says, Trisha, ever play a silly RPG? Something like the Apocalypse World mutation system where your character would end up crazy by the end? I have played, well, I guess it's funny, this Puppet Land ended up being silly, but I think it's actually a very, very dark system. It's very grim, but it depends who you're playing with. But a specifically silly system, I mean, Fungeons and Flagons, yes, I would consider that a very silly system. And now you guys are talking about what a new D&D session would look like. Oh man, now you guys are, oh man. Chris Lucer just designed Strip D&D. Every time there's a crit fail, a player removes an article of clothing. Wow. I can't believe my college group didn't come up with that, to be perfectly honest. Oh no, now we're taking this in a whole separate realm. Maybe I don't want to teach little man D&D. Hilarious. Well, and actually now there's so many online D&D options, so you can play with friends that are on the other side of the world if you want to. But I guess if they're online and all you're seeing is like what you're seeing now, those people could totally not be wearing pants and you would have no idea. Hilarious. Chris says, this is my legacy now. This is your legacy now. Everyone's down for it. With that, let's go ahead and close out this Naked Truth. Thank you guys so much for chatting about this with me and for the little trip down memory lane. And shout out to Hero Forge for making such cool minis. I've always bought generic minis and then tried to customize them to make them more like my characters, but now you can actually really create your character and 3D print them. I will warn you, it's not the cheapest option. But it's very cool that that option now exists because it didn't exist when I was first learning how to play. So I love them and that's very cool. And shout out to Geek and Sundry for building such a wonderful tabletop role-playing game community. And I'm very honored to be a part of it, like I said before. So thank you guys so much for being here again. And thank you to everyone who's been making Naked Truth video responses. I'm trying to make a place on the community tab of this channel for people to post those so you can share them with everybody else. And if you're hungering for more Naked Truth videos, that's where you can find them and really interact with that community. Another great way to interact with the community here, if you're watching this after the fact and you can't chat live, is to go into my Discord and chat about it on the Naked Truth channel on the Discord. You can go in there and talk about stuff with other members of the Naked Army and Naked Truth community. And yeah, keep suggesting topics. This was really cool. Thank you, Stephen Summers, for suggesting this topic. I cannot believe I haven't covered it, but suggest topics that you want to talk about on a future Naked Truth. This is as much my show as it is your show. This is what we do together. So let me know what you want to chat about. And yeah, and that's been it for this Naked Truth. Thank you also to everyone who gave a super chat today and supported this channel. That was Kevin Petty, Adam C, Xenocore01, Nicholas Beeson, and now just one from Adventure in Life. Thank you, Adventure in Life. Says Tabletop Troubadour Games, a company that makes highly detailed set pieces for D&D type games. Imagine Labyrinth movie inspired set pieces. Thank you. I will be checking that out as soon as the stream is over. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And because we skipped last week's Naked Truth and postponed to this week, that means that our next Naked Truth will actually be next week. So 12:30 Pacific time next Saturday if you want to join in live. If you're watching this after the fact and you want to join us live, that's when we're going to be doing it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. The next time that you will be able to find me on the internet is tomorrow on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Trisha Hershberger. I'm doing a big video game giveaway. So swing on by. You don't have to do anything special to be entered to win. You just have to be there hanging out in stream and you're eligible. So check that out tomorrow around 10 a.m. Pacific time. And I gotta go because in just a few hours I'm having a birthday party for little man. He turns 2 on Tuesday and today is his birthday party day. So we're really excited and he's gonna hang out with all his baby friends. We got like 10 baby friends. We're all gonna go to a park. It's gonna be a good time. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you maybe tomorrow on Twitch or maybe next week for the Naked Truth. Okay. Bye. See you later.